Overwhelmed with the flood of scattered security alerts? Cut through the noise with D3 Security Smart SOAR. Consolidate and contextualize every alert across your Microsoft security and third-party solutions. Find real threats. Reduce the overwhelm. Focus on what matters. Find us on the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace.
Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar with D3 and Microsoft Security. The topic for the webinar today is Correlate EDR XDR data with external sources and automate response. We have lots to share. We've got some fantastic speakers from Microsoft and D3. And through the webinar, we're going to give you lots of tips and some tricks to improve your security posture. We will wait for another few seconds while people are joining in, and then we will get started. Okay, fantastic. So we'll start with some housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on demand as well. So if some of you need to drop out during the webinar for any reason, know that you will receive a link to the recording at a later date. We will have a live Q&A session at the end. I encourage you all to stay back for that. Be sure to ask questions. You can also type them into the chat as they come into your mind. And as always, the best question from the audience will receive a $50 gift voucher courtesy of D3. I'm your host today. I'm Amardeep. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances. And I hope that you get a lot out of the webinar today. Before we jump into the agenda, I want to first introduce our speakers. Josh, would you like to start and introduce yourself first?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Bregman. I'm a product manager on the MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint team. Got over 25-year cybersecurity product experience, the last 3 of which have been with Microsoft, working on Defender. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he's going to introduce himself.
Thanks, Josh. I am an architect and strategist in our partner CXE team. So we help companies make technical integration investments across the Microsoft security stack. Veteran of a couple startups and 14 years at Microsoft. Looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, my name is Pierre Niget. I'm an incident response researcher here at D3. So I've worked here for about 3 years. The first half of my career, I was helping deploy SOAR into enterprise and service providers. And now I work more learning about new attack patterns and building and testing playbooks to address them. So I'm excited to chat and share what we've been working on with the Microsoft team.
Fantastic, Pierre. Thank you, Josh and Eric, for introducing yourself, and thank you, Pierre. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. We'll start with a quick overview of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. We will then dive into some of the challenges with non-Microsoft integrations and how D3 SOAR enhances the Microsoft Defender deployments. We'll also cover some of the benefits of integrating Microsoft Defender with D3 SOAR, after which Pierre will show us a quick solution demonstration, and then we move into the Q&A. So, Josh, over to you for taking it away with Microsoft Defender.
Awesome. So I'm going to give a quick overview of Defender for Endpoint as it relates to the scenario that we're going to discuss today in the webinar, which is disrupting attacks targeting the endpoint. So next slide. So the sophistication, speed, and scale of cyber attacks are ever increasing. I think this is something that people know, but here's a couple statistics that help underscore the challenges. So we're seeing password attacks growing exponentially. So you can look at the graph on the left, and you can see that year over year, there used to be 3 billion attacks per month, and it's now 30 billion attacks per month. And when these attacks happen, they happen very quickly. So you look at the graph on the right, the median time for an attacker to access private data from phishing is just 72 minutes. And so these things happen very quickly, which means responding every second counts in incident response. So next slide. So even though it's an evolving threat landscape, endpoints or devices are still a prime target. And so this is an ever increasing challenge, particularly with the emergence of, cyber criminals as a service has really been changing. We're seeing a lot of that in the threat landscape. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is our complete endpoint security platform that helps organizations secure their entire devices against such threats. Defender for Endpoint not only covers a wide range of devices across Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, and iOS, it also delivers industry-leading comprehensive threat protection from vulnerability management to endpoint detection and response. Defender for Endpoint is core to our Defender XDR, offering a seamless ramp-up for holistic threat protection platform across all of your assets. There are many components of Defender for Endpoint that make it unique in the market. Defender for Endpoint uses AI to generate deception techniques, and these decoys and lures resemble authentic user profiles and other assets. This goes beyond simple honeypots. They are tailored to fit your specific environment, so they look absolutely real. All you have to do is switch the toggle, and Defender for Endpoint will automatically generate them. No additional setup needed. Attack disruption delivers real-time protection against in-progress hands-on keyboard attacks by automatically containing any compromised user from accessing a device onboarded for Defender for Endpoint, effectively locking them out from accessing your environment, and it happens in less than 3 minutes on average. This is on by default in all MDE customers, and it delivers protection from day one. When we say protecting devices end-to-end, Defender for Endpoint spans devices for end users, servers, mobile, OT, and IoT. As the threats against each device type and platform vary significantly, we purpose-built protections per device class and operating system. How you would secure a Windows laptop for an office worker differs significantly from a Linux server for a healthcare facility. We continue to make significant investments in server protection, including an eBPF technology that helps ensure the performance and reliability of our Linux offering, and an automatic attack disruption that has secured hundreds of servers against ransomware in the last few months. All of these endpoints need to be incorporated into a holistic endpoint security strategy. Next slide. Awesome. So I just want to call out that attack disruption is very different than a typical detection. Today, we can disrupt ransomware, business email compromise, adversary in the middle scenarios in an average of 3 minutes. We're just getting started here, but have already helped disrupt 1,200 incidents this month and disabled 3,500 user accounts in the last 6 months that were attacked. A couple with that saved over 100,000 devices. We've taken a very conservative approach to this and have a 99% confidence, so false positives are less of a challenge. Just one story to frame this is that a customer had Microsoft protecting their clients and other assets, and not yet deployed MDE to their server estate. An attacker came in on 10 different entry points and waves across 10 different compromised domains and 3 spreader IPs. The attacker targeted roughly 2,000 devices. And attack disruption saved 97% of those. The unprotected devices were unfortunately lost. And this is all on by default with no additional effort from customers. But as we like to say, security is a team sport, and MDE can't do it alone. And so I want to turn it over to Eric, who's going to talk about some of the integration gaps and how those can be solved.
Thanks, Josh. And I really love the concept that security is a team sport. You're going to have products in your operational space from a wide variety of suppliers. You're going to have security products that generate and deal with signal and insights and conclusions from everything in your IT estate. coordinating all of that and pulling it all together to make it available for investigation and response is the realm of Sentinel and the Microsoft XDR, which Defender is a participant and one of the foundational platforms. And it creates also the opportunity to integrate these third-party scenarios with workflows and remediations and investigative actions coordinated with our orchestration partners, such as D3. So what I'd like to do is turn the time over to Pierre to talk a little bit more about that.
So D3 comes in as this vendor agnostic integrator between different security tools. Yeah, obviously Microsoft is one of the best in the industry. Some companies have deployed point solutions, so they have a variety of different suppliers for their different security needs. And in this case, they still want to be able to leverage their data and make the most out of it. They want to be able to send new and updated information to Defender and retrieve information from their network security tools and create this holistic picture of an attack as it's going on, regardless of their stack. And so D3, it helps centralize this kind of incident response and investigation across these siloed systems, and it eliminates the need for security teams to switch between multiple consoles. So it's really the agnostic integrator between them. And this kind of touches on a important topic in the industry right now, which is unified security operations and what that means and the kind of benefits that teams can extract from that, such as automation. And a few of the benefits that we've listed here are a centralized place for incident response, which I've already talked about. This is where you can streamline your workflows with a single pane of glass for all incidents. You're not hopping between different alerting tools in order to triage those tickets. It eliminates console switching. You can automate security tasks, so manual work. This is what SOAR and other automation platforms are really known for, is cutting away that low-hanging fruit. And then it enables AI-driven capabilities. And so this is something that Microsoft excels at as well, with their vast access to data sets, their ability to detect and respond to and shut down threats that are in progress. This really happens when you have this kind of unified security platform. So what we're introducing D3 as here is this way to kind of extract those benefits of unification across a blended security environment. And I'll just pass it off to Eric or Josh if you have anything you want to
add. No, Pierre, but I'd love to see the sort of details of the scenario that we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Yeah, so we can move on to the next slide. So what we're going to work on here is we're starting kind of at the end here and step 6 of this attack at the credential dump, which was detected and sent into D3 by Microsoft Defender. And then we're going to use playbooks and orchestration between different tools to work back and kind of paint a picture of how we got to where we are. So if we go to step 1, we'll see that initially there was a phishing email which contained a malicious file. The user downloaded it, unzipped the file, which downloaded some malware on their device, which you can see as step 2. This activity is tracked in Sentinel, which we can pull in as well. That device then sends out a request to a control server off the network, which is step 3. That server goes and starts sending commands back to the device as step 4. And one of those commands is to invoke the Mimikatz application for credential dumping, which is step 6. And there could be some lateral movement involved as well. But what we wanted to demonstrate here is this: how we can use multiple Microsoft products. You can see Office 365, Microsoft Sentinel, and Microsoft Defender, and you can add to this suite any kind of third-party tool that you may be using. It could be threat intelligence. In this case, we're using network security tools as well, because you really need access to all of that data in order to paint this holistic picture. And once again, I'll ask if there's anything you guys want to add.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit on why this is such a resonant scenario, because it originates with a human activity. As you might imagine, Microsoft does a lot of internal training about security, much of which is very, very confidential. But there was a comment made in one training by one of our security leads that kind of highlights this, and that is that we can patch bad code but we can't patch curious users. And that accrues directly to the concept of phishing, is that at some point, even as educated as we are about phishing emails and identifying them and looking for indicators that it's a phishing email, we're going to make a mistake. And it's this coordinated safety net that we're all building together through automation that's going to help us not have that human failing become a bigger impact.
So true. It's really this integration between everything that's going to keep organizations safe across the board.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. The bad guys know that the humans are vulnerable. I've got elderly parents who literally called me one time and they said, "Is there someone named Bob who works at Microsoft who would need my information? He says I've got a problem." And so the bad guys know this, and they go after the people. The only other thing that I would add here is that, in this scenario that we're going to talk about and a little bit more about, Defender's doing a great job here and is, mitigating the Mimikatz and stopping it and sending the information up to Sentinel. But what we're really going to explore here is like how we can leverage some of the indicators of compromise capability, the integration there with Defender and Sentinel, to further understand what's sort of going on and provide sufficient remediation and stop this from happening again by looking at some of the network aspects, which are outside of the span of control for Defender for Endpoint.
Yeah, so I can take that into the product demonstration now. Okay, so here we are inside of the D3 platform. We can see a incident queue here, which is not unlike many other security tools. D3, the first step is it centralizes alerts. And so your alerts from your SIM, from your EDR, from your NDR, from your email security, they'll all be ingested into this single platform here. And the benefit of that is obviously no console switching, but you can also tack on playbooks behind the scenes. And so when you open up an incident here, you can see the underlying event that triggered it. We can see that it was ingested from Microsoft Defender. We can see a short description here that a process has scheduled an unusual task, some malware scheduled task to maintain persistence. And so we can see pending tasks that are open. We can isolate the host, create some indicators. But before we do that, we want to see kind of more context on this alert. We can see some MITRE tactics that Defender has also tagged on the alert, and some of the artifacts that have been involved in this attack. So behind the scenes, what we're going to see is quite a lengthy playbook, which goes through multiple stages of the investigation. The first is it's going to search for through Office 365 and Microsoft Sentinel for any related file alerts that were tagged in any of their logs. Once we get back the email information here, it's going to go through, branch out into analysis on both the sender and the recipient. And then once we get, what we're really interested in internally are the recipients, and to see what kind of activity has been going on their devices. We'll get all of that from Microsoft Entra ID. So it's an excellent identity and access management platform, which gives us a lot of good data. And then we branch off into some more enrichment here. So activity on the host, activity by the process, and then on the network side. So here we're going to use, this is like a standard network security query. We're going to get TCP connections from the recipients of these emails back here. And then we're going to check the IP reputation from some open source intelligence, and anything above a 5 risk level, we're going to push along back up through the queue. And we're going to ask if there are any potential C2 servers found on the domain side. Here it says false, so we skip over the who is lookup, but it still comes up because those risk levels were above high. And on the containment side, we go ahead and we block the IP address on our on the network tool. And then we also have some options here, which you saw in the incident workspace, which is to create some indicators and then also isolate the host. But this is obviously a very lengthy and a convoluted view. All of this data that we're pulling in through the playbook, we centralize here in the investigation tab. And so this is really where users come in and they take a look at the entire, all of the work that the playbook is doing. And so this will kind of model the walkthrough that I just made. But here we can see some details on the original event. So we can see the host name, its IP address, and then the command line executable that triggered the alert. We can see some enriched information on that executable, and we can see some scan results from Microsoft Defender. So what are some of the vulnerabilities that have been found on this device? So this is just really important to understand the state of an affected device. And then here we can see those malicious outbound TCP connections. So we can see the risk levels here. We can see the highest one is at the top here, this 216 IP address. And then here's that information from Office 365. So who's sending emails with this malicious attachment? What's the subject line? And who are the recipients? We got all of that information centralized here. And then we've got the core recipients as well right here and their job title, which gives us an understanding of the potential scope of this attack. We can see a little bit more correlated activity. So who's being targeted the most frequently, and then some of the really noteworthy connections that have been established between devices and inside our network and devices outside of our network. And then finally, the activity that triggered the alert. So commander.exe invokes our password dumping application here, Mimic has. And so what we can do is we can take this IP address, we can come back into the overview. And we won't need to isolate the host since Defender has already mitigated this attack. But what we can do is we can create a couple indicators here to continue monitoring for activity to this device. We can hit run here directly from the platform. This will go ahead and this will query back to Microsoft Defender and it'll create an alerting indicator. And then we can do the same for file indicators here. So we can see the hash value for the file in the email. You can see that already automatically populated. We can hit run. And then once it's done, we can know that now that's being actively monitored inside of Defender. And if we want to clear this out, we can hit skip. And we can come back here and we can understand that, okay, this alert has been mitigated from the Defender side, and now we're actively monitoring. We've gone in and we've blocked it on the firewall as well. And we've set up some indicators to continue monitoring into the future. And so with that, I can pass it back off to the rest of the panel, and we can chat about the use case and also open the floor up for questions.
One thing I'd love to do here is to summarize what we've seen. An automatic attack disruption was triggered. An investigation workflow, an analysis workflow resulted from that resulted in material that can be used to produce remediation and also to be used for further analysis as indicators in Sentinel, for example, to find other compromised hosts that might have been unmonitored or other sort of conversations going on with the C2 indicators that you found. This is a really complete end-to-end kind of solution, and we can repeat these over and over again with this type of partnership.
One of the things that sort of stood out for me, and a comment that you made earlier, was that we can patch bad code, but we can't patch bad users. I think that's something, curious users.
Curious users.
That's something that that really resonated, and Pierre has gone, and with your help and with Josh's help, we've kind of laid out a scenario today that we've discussed, and I can see and tell from the questions that have been coming in that there are other scenarios as well that people have questions about, and for anyone who would like to sort of discuss, because the majority of our audience today are incident responders. So if any of you would like to deep dive into an area that is of concern for you, or a use case that you want to talk about and figure out what's the best way forward, we can definitely set up some time with Pierre to walk through your solution, your specific use case, and share with you some of the best practices that we've gathered in working with Microsoft over the years. Pierre, did you want to add something to that?
No, I think, working hand in hand with vendors like Microsoft and also users who are either curious about automation or have already gone down the path is something that always delivers fruitful results. These kinds of workflows they're not created overnight, but we find that even the gradual steps to get something like this fully deployed do bring a lot of value, because even starting with low-hanging fruit can shave off minutes per alert, and then multiply that by the number of investigations teams are doing every day. The benefits start to really stack up. And with strong integrations like there are with established products like Entra, Office 365, Sentinel, and Defender, then it just becomes it just makes building these workflows much easier, because we know the quality of the data we're getting back, the speed of the response, the breadth of actions we can take on our partners' environments. There are very few limits, and so yeah, the limit is just in the imagination at that point.
Okay, this feels like a good time to move to the Q&A. I know some of you have been patiently waiting for your questions to be answered. And with that, let's get into it right away. So I'm going to ask the first question, which is, how does the integration work and which Microsoft licenses do you need?
Yeah, so I can answer that. Let me just, in terms of the licenses, for Defender, it's Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 and Plan 2, and then Microsoft Defender for Business. I know that because I pulled together a partnership document for the Defender team just a couple of days ago. Sentinel, I'm not sure right off the top of my head. Eric, you may know, but I could check the connection parameters in the tool.
Sure. It's actually really easy. Sentinel actually isn't licensed. It's a utility model. So a customer who has an Azure tenant can deploy a Sentinel workspace. It's free until you start putting data in it. And that's the meter that spins, and that will be the line item that a customer would see on their bill. So it's very easy to deploy it. We have a free trial for Sentinel, which is 31 days for the first time you spawn a workspace, and up to 10 gig a day.
Okay. The second question I have is, can you ingest logs directly into D3?
The short answer is yes. We have a few customers who do that. However, we usually recommend ingesting logs into a tool designed specifically for detection first, and then ingesting those security alerts into D3 for your automated response.
Okay. There's a question which I'm going to click on Answer Live because they use the Q&A button. It says, which other XDR-like tools does D3 integrate with? CrowdStrike, others?
Yeah, quite a few. We've got over 400 integrations right now. So CrowdStrike, Cybereason, Darktrace, Stellar Cyber, many integrations that fall in that category.
Okay, thanks, Pierre. I guess the next one is also a question that's probably best answered by you. The question is, hi, I work as a lead incident research threat hunter at an MSSP, and I have two questions. Does your tool map out to the MITRE Atlas framework? And does your tool pull in threat intel from various paid feeds?
So our tool right now, it maps directly to MITRE ATT&CK, and we are improving it to also map to the outstanding tactics from Atlas. And all of those detections are custom as well. So whenever you see a particular pattern, it can be tagged with an Atlas tactic or technique. And then a technique-specific playbook can be attached to it, which is kind of a more advanced way to use the platform. And how does our tool pull in threat intel from various paid feeds? It's all API-based, and so you determine which of those actions you want to run inside of your playbooks. Inside of D3, you can have actions that run on ingestion right away. And so you can use threat intel data on ingestion to set a more accurate severity for an incoming alert, to classify it as a true or false positive. And you can also use it at the incident level. So after an event has been escalated, you can use it at the incident level to inform those classification decisions and potentially decide which assets you want to take action on.
I think that was a great question, and that was also a great answer. So thank you, Pierre. The next one is probably going to be, shared question. It says that what if our Sentinel instance is partly managed by an MSSP and we don't want to repeat the work?
Eric, did you want to take this one?
I'll try. When we talk about repeating the work, are we talking about the workflow, or maybe a little clarification for the questioner on that? In the meantime, while you're potentially responding in the chat, I'll answer a couple general things about the MSSP engagement model that's part of Sentinel. So Sentinel is an Azure deployed service, and there's a whole host of capabilities on the Azure platform that support on behalf of operation. And so as a result, we use an infrastructure called Azure Lighthouse, which is the permissioning infrastructure. And then for companies, because the data that you might ingest into Sentinel might be very specific data that is unique to you. It's almost always extremely confidential and private data as well. And you may have specific data sovereignty requirements. When Sentinel is deployed, you get to choose where. It's done through resource groups, which represent physical locations and actual infrastructure that Azure has in locations around the world that you can choose to deploy into. And that way you can manage that. In fact, even large companies that manage multiple workspaces operate like MSSPs. Let me pause there and see if maybe that clarification came in on the chat.
No, but I did get a follow-up question on how many playbooks that we have available already for Microsoft Sentinel, etc.
Yeah, so we do have out-of-the-box playbooks for all of your major integrations. And we have for Sentinel, for example, 11 commands that are built out of the box. And those commands string together multiple API calls and whatever kind of data transformation you may need. But we always say that having an out-of-the-box playbook from a SOAR vendor is kind of like having a cookie cutter emergency evacuation plan for a building. It's like, that's not really what you want. What you want is one that's designed specifically for that building. And so part of the SOAR onboarding process is figuring out what that plan looks like for you.
Okay. I have one more question, which is, what's some work that's maybe best done in Defender or Sentinel?
And not D3?
Yeah.
Okay. Josh, Eric, did either of you want to tackle that one?
I mean, I think that the scenario that we laid out, that we showed here, gives you a sort of template for like sort of best practices, like what things are really good to be done in Defender, and then the role for Sentinel, and then the role for D3. So, I mean, that's fundamentally why we picked the use case for the webinar. And so, not sure what else to really say about that. Eric, I don't know if you wanted to color that in a little more.
Sure. I mean, when you think about Defender and the full suite, it's really focused around all of the complexity and the incredible effort that's involved in creating detections on endpoints. But it also creates the place where we can coordinate and correlate alerts that come in from third parties and from third-party scenarios. And there's two scenarios in that sort of third-party space. One is for products that might be in your security stack today that generate insights and conclusions. We want those to come in. That is one of the purposes of Sentinel, and many of the Sentinel integrations bring in those insights and conclusions, and they're now part of the full XDR. And then the second part is when you don't have detections. What you have is a stream of events, a big pile of bits. This is a big data problem. This is the role of the classic SIM in days going back, almost 18, 19 years now from the first SIMs, where we're basically trying to identify patterns in these event streams, tease out the nuance of malice contained in the big pile of bits. And so generating detections out of thin air. But at the end of the day, all of that comes together, and that's what allows us to correlate within the combination of Sentinel and Defender. And this is the fuel then that creates the evidence for the investigations and workflows that D3 will help us with, especially when we get to the mitigation stage where we have to stop the bleeding, and the remediation stage where we're trying to get a patient back to health. And so all of these involve all three of us.
That's a great answer. And those were some excellent questions that all of you came up with today. So glad that you could all join this webinar with D3 and Microsoft. And thank you, Eric, Josh, and Pierre for your time today, and for the painstaking efforts I know that have gone into planning this webinar and bringing it to life. So if anyone in the audience, if you have additional questions, you can drop us a note at marketing@d3security.com, and we'll be sure to respond back to your questions. With that, I'm going to end the webinar now, and I wish you all a great day.